Did your favorite crypto influencers call the last top or completely miss it? Were they all in at the highs and scared at the lows? Let's start with Elio Trades. Around the lows, his ex-posts were cautiously bullish and focused on the long term, which lined up with his YouTube video the following week, on April 13th. In my opinion, this video leans bearish. He reinforces Ben Cohen's narrative that we need interest rate cuts and quantitative easing before a true altcoin season can begin. Even the comments section picked up on the similarities. But here's the difference. Ben has been consistently cautious on altcoins for years. Elio, on the other hand, was publishing ultra-bullish videos while Bitcoin and altcoins were topping. For example, in a January 15th video, he opens by saying, "You have 30 days left until the most consequential bull run in the history of cryptocurrency explodes." He was mocking people on X who were calling the top. In December, he was calling for a super cycle. Back on November 30th, he released a video about a Bitcoin to altcoins rotation, which he followed with several others suggesting altcoins were about to explode. And they did, just in the opposite direction. Fast forward to today after the bounce, and he's starting to flip bullish again. So what we have here is arguably the worst combo, extremely bullish at the top and turning bearish at the bottom. Maybe he didn't declare the end of the bull run outright, but the contrast between his content near all-time highs and at the recent lows is striking. It's worth asking. Is flipping bearish on altcoins near the bottom, then turning bullish after they've already made a big move, really a sound strategy? As this video isn't strictly about altcoin portfolios but more about broader market outlooks, I decided to include Ben Cowen. Even though his core thesis leans heavily toward Bitcoin dominance, so he doesn't typically dive into altcoin narratives. His perspective is actually a refreshing contrast to most major influencers, and he's been mentioned quite a few times in my comments. Lately, you can even see other influencers starting to mirror his outlook. In his January 21st video, I'd say his tone was fairly neutral. He outlined both bullish and bearish possibilities, similar to his December 16th video where he discussed historical patterns and potential risks tied to political uncertainty, like the upcoming US administration change. So definitely not a moon boy. In fact, you could argue he was slightly bearish compared to almost everyone else at that time. On April 7th, he released a video focused on Ethereum, but he also briefly touched on Bitcoin, expecting a potential bounce following a death cross, though he wasn't certain the bottom was in. Again, a balanced view, cautious but data-driven. Overall, Ben Cohen has stayed consistent. His approach is grounded in historical data, and he always seems to strive for objectivity. Whether prices go up or down, he's not swinging wildly bullish or overly bearish, just measured, analytical, and focused on probabilities. Now let's talk about Murad and his market views. He's gone all in on memes and has set some pretty wild targets for them. And to be fair, that hasn't been a bad bet recently. But first, let's take a quick look at what he was saying back when the market was topping in December and January. In December, he was extremely bullish, consistently posting about memes from his list like SBX and Giga, with 100x potential as of December 15th. He also mentioned Apu and a few others. Then in January, he doubled down, calling for an upcoming meme coin mania and urging people to raise their targets. So yes, he was bullish at the top, but at least he didn't flip bearish at the bottom. And looking at the recent data, memes have actually been one of the best performing narratives since the April low. By the way, I covered the best performing narrative more deeply in my latest newsletter, link in the description if you want to check that out. Back to meme coins, they're currently the second best performer. The meme coin index I put together is up over 150% on average since the April low. Here are the coins I used, a mix of large caps and smaller ones across various sub-narratives like Base, Solana, ETH, and AI-generated memes. Murad's specific meme picks have performed a bit worse, closer to 100% on average, but it's worth noting many of them bottomed in March. Depending on which tokens you include, results vary, but overall, memes are outperforming nearly every other narrative. For context, Bitcoin has gained around 40% since the April low, so memes are clearly outpacing it with over 100% gains. Of course, part of that is because they dropped so much in previous months. But when something gets hit hard and remains relevant, the rebound potential is real. Becker has been slowly switching from narrative to narrative this cycle. starting with gaming, then moving on to AI, and more recently RWA coins. On December 8th, he claimed Super was already a success and that the gaming bull run hadn't even started yet. Just a few days later, on December 11th, he doubled down with an X post calling for a big alt season, including ETH and midcaps, suggesting a broader altcoin surge was around the corner. That call came right before the altcoin market started to roll over. Then on January 24th, he was still bullish. This time highlighting RWA coins, predicting they were about to see an institutional bull run. He teased a follow-up video with his top RWA bets, but as we know, the market broke down completely soon after. Fast forward to April 7th and 8th, right as the market bottomed. Becker remained bullish. He predicted a 4x on ETH, 2x on BTC, and 5-10x on boring alts over the next 6 months. He wasn't sure if the bottom was in, but said it didn't really matter because higher prices were coming and Bitcoin was heading well above 100K. So how does it all stack up? He was clearly very bullish near the top, and even as the market corrected, he didn't flip bearish at the bottom, which is more than you can say for some other influencers. Now let's take a look at the performance of RWA and gaming narratives. Starting with RWA, here's the chart. Interestingly, the RWA index barely outperformed Bitcoin. The main reason for that is Mantra, which I included in the basket, has been absolutely crushed in recent weeks. The rest of the RWA coins are holding up decently, but Mantra's collapse may have shaken confidence in the entire narrative. Now compare that with gaming, and there's a bit of a surprise. It actually outperformed RWA, but if you excluded Mantra from the RWA basket, the performance would be more or less similar. Looking at BTC-denominated charts, there is some outperformance, but not a big one. But just keep in mind, if the market breaks down again, those BTC gains can unwind quickly. Deutscher, one of the most active and popular crypto analysts on X, so it was easy to track his views during the recent market top and bottom. On December 6th, he posted that altcoins were likely to perform well, as long as Bitcoin held or moved higher, noting that the market had shifted more in favor of alts. But in reality, while Bitcoin pushed to new highs in January, altcoins didn't follow. So that thesis didn't really play out. Overall, he was clearly bullish in December and remained so into January, posting about an incoming Bitcoin supply shock and suggesting we were heading into the craziest cycle yet. On January 17th, he also said that Total 3, the altcoin index, looked ridiculously bullish. We all know what happened next. So did he flip bearish near the lows? Not exactly. He did share some bearish posts, for example, one suggesting ETH could drop much lower than it actually did, adding fuel to an already fearful market. But to be fair, most of his commentary during that time leaned bullish, or at least cautiously bullish. He outlined a clear buying framework, starting with safer assets like equities, then individual stocks, then Bitcoin, and only then considering alts. Since the April 7th low, many altcoins have outperformed Bitcoin, but BTC itself still performed close to the average of many narratives. Considering its lower risk profile, that makes it a solid pick. VirtualBacon is one of the more analytical crypto influencers. And the good thing is, he shares his actual portfolio moves, so we can cross-check not just what he said, but what he actually did, or at least what he decided to share in his public portfolio. In December, he was clearly bullish, predicting the start of altcoin outperformance and suggesting Bitcoin could surge as high as 200K in the coming weeks if the cycle played out like 2017. He compared breaking 100K now to breaking 10K back then. What about January? He pointed out that ETH was lagging behind Bitcoin and said that was about to change, projecting it would shine over the next 6 months and targeting 14K in 2025. He also bought Trump meme coin at $33, a move that reflects extreme market greed. Interestingly, there's no record of this transaction in his public portfolio spreadsheet. Most likely, since it was a highly speculative play, he kept it outside of his public portfolio, which focuses on more conservative positions. That portfolio shows that by March 20th, he had exited most of his altcoins and consolidated into safer holdings. That's outside the scope of this video. Maybe I'll cover how that strategy played out in a future portfolio breakdown, but just at a glance, dumping Fartcoin at 35 cents didn't exactly age well. But that's just one position. On April 9th, right after the local bottom, he posted that he was accumulating Bitcoin between 76 and 85K, calling it a standard bull market correction. He also extended his bull market timeline into mid-2026. So overall, he didn't turn fearful at the lows and actually continued to average in with a longer-term view. Now we've got Brian Jung, one of the biggest names on crypto YouTube. He doesn't post as frequently as others, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Back in December, it was the usual story, bullish posts claiming we're still early and even predicting a violent leg up for one of his picks. In January, he doubled down, saying retail wasn't ready for what was coming. He even speculated about a potential Bitcoin strategic reserve announcement. And when the market started dipping, he framed it as the final shakeout. We know what happened next, but while pretty much everyone was bullish at the top, what's more interesting is what happened after. Brian mostly stopped posting. In April, while the market was bottoming, he shared a post about waking up early, working out, and success, nothing related to crypto. Even now, he hasn't returned to crypto posts, despite being very active in the December-January window. You can judge that however you like. His YouTube channel also took a break and only recently resumed posting. Personally, I think staying active, even if you're cautious or neutral, is better than disappearing altogether when things get tough. Now it's time for Crypto Banter Ran, who, as far as I know, runs the most popular live crypto show on YouTube. And finally, we have someone who leaned bearish back in December. He acknowledged that his take might be unpopular, but was calling for a major dump in both Bitcoin and alts. The market did push a bit higher afterward, but eventually, it did start breaking down. Unfortunately, by January, Ran flipped bullish. He was saying things like this crypto rally won't stop, and after Trump's meme coin turned out to be real, he doubled down with "you're not bullish enough." He also called the initial dump during Trump's launch a great buying opportunity, especially for AI agent tokens, which ended up getting totally wrecked over the following months, though some are now starting to bounce back. On April 9th, Ran was predicting that most tariffs would be significantly diminished, and the next day he posted, "The worst is over," showing strong conviction that the market had turned and that call aged well. However, shortly after, he posted questioning whether ETH could ever recover, so there was clearly still some uncertainty and fear, especially around ETH, which had been underperforming for so long and now suddenly started to rally. As always, the market surprises. Lark Davis. He posts a lot on X, memes, paid promos, more memes, but I managed to dig through it all and find the relevant posts for this comparison. On December 5th, he claimed it was just the beginning for Cardano. 2 days later, he asked his audience if they were ready for ETH season. Clearly, he was bullish. That sentiment carried into January, with posts about winning so much it gets tiring, finally getting the glorious bull market we were promised, and the upcoming, face-melting Trump pump. Then came the April 7th low, and Lark kept a relatively optimistic tone. He reminded followers that crypto has been through tough times before and could survive a tariff war too. In a video he shared, he argued that unless we're heading into a full-blown depression, moments of fear have historically been great buying opportunities. So once again, we see a similar pattern, very bullish at the top, shilling alts and promising massive upside, and during uncertainty, shifting to a more cautiously bullish stance rather than flipping bearish. To sum it all up, in December, only Ran and Ben were showing any real concern about a potential correction in the crypto market. The other 7 influencers were either bullish or extremely bullish. By January, only Ben was still offering a contrarian perspective. Everyone else we covered was full-on bullish, hyped about pro-crypto Trump, a potential Bitcoin reserve announcement, and new favorable regulations. The bullish news was stacking up to the point where it felt like things couldn't get much better. And that's exactly when the market started to roll over, right after Trump took office. It turned out to be a classic sell the news event. The Bitcoin reserve never materialized, or at least not in a way that created meaningful buying pressure. Even if some suspected the inauguration could be a short-term top, practically no one predicted just how severe the correction would be. A deep, drawn-out sell-off that absolutely wrecked alts. To give the influencers some credit, most of them didn't flip bearish at the lows. At worst, some went more conservative or started losing conviction in alts. Historically, Bitcoin has never been a bad bet. it always finds a way to recover. But altcoins bleed their BTC value, often never reclaiming it. The problem is that it's far better to be in Bitcoin from the start, not after your altcoins have already lost 50% or more of their value against it. And just to be clear, I'm not making these videos to mock influencers. I want you to look at the data and think critically. Ask yourself, is following what they say actually helping you? Numbers don't lie.